So, let us take up any question in connection with our discussion about harmony in society.
Yes. Sir, I have one question. That what is the right age to start value education? I'm asking because children don't have the, I think children don't have the capacity to think so deeply and evaluate all these, proposals that we are talking. Because this also the science is that the brain does not develop or this the cognitive ability very much. So is there a different process of learning for adults and different process for children? What should we do in the case of children?
Yeah. So, if you look at this workshop or this course, okay, this was particularly developed for introducing this value education in higher education and there also in technical education. Okay. So, it was the context of the students who are grown up of the age of 18 to 22, 25. So, the whole process of delivering this value education was designed for the adults, for the grown ups. Okay. And if you look at the whole process, what it is saying is that each one of us can explore things, investigate things, verify things ourselves, and try to live accordingly. Okay. And through that we will understand the basic underlying harmony in existence, and once we understand them, okay, we can live up to it and share with others. So, this is essentially saying that through the process of self exploration, through the process of self investigation, through the process of self study, one can understand the underlying harmony, okay, and live up to it on his own right. So, true, this is meant for the adults, for the grown ups, right, people who have anyway started asking questions, okay, and seeking for the answer, people who want to verify things themselves, right. So, this is for the adults, for the grown ups, right. So, students of the age let us say 18 plus, okay. Even if you we have tried it out with the students with 12 years of age and it works with them, right. But when it was designed particularly for the this graduate students, okay, and particularly the engineering students who have passed through intermediate, so around 17-18 years of age and now studying in engineering college, in professional college. So, it is a method for them. Okay. In fact, this was an outcome of our extensive experiment that we did with the people in the society, with all kind of people in the society, with the scholars, the teachers, with the students, with the academicians, with administrative people. We also tried it out in jail inmates, and with farmers and Adivasis and all kind of people. So, first time it was in the context of these people, these adults, right, what we are calling as people's education, and then we tried it out in the school, in the colleges, higher education. So, and we found that it works, it works for them because they are already wanting to verify it themselves, and not take things as given as true, and therefore just go about practicing it. So, it has been working with the people in the society, it is working with the adults in the graduation and post graduation and so on. So, that is why we have been emphasizing right from the beginning that take these things as proposals, not as truth. Okay. Verify them on your own right, and this process of self verification includes verifying on the basis of one's own natural acceptance, okay, and also verifying it on the basis of their experiential validation in terms of their behavior, in terms of their work, the behavior with human being and work with rest of nature. So, all this basically is in the context of the people in the society or in the context of the students who are graduating, or who are in the higher education. If you want to do it for the children, we have found that it works quite well even with the children studying in class 8th, 9th, so that is age up to 12. But if you want to work it out with smaller younger children, then probably you will have to look into other possibilities, okay, of the process of education. So, if you look at the process of education which takes place in the child, okay, then we will be able to understand little bit about that as well. One thing is very sure, when you ask when do you start this value education, right, it has to be started at the very early. Okay. So, the child, the human child is always wanting to learn, to understand, to live. Okay. So, right from the early childhood you can see that tendency in the child, and therefore, we must provide this environment for right education and sanskar from the beginning. So, it starts with the parents. So, even when the child is 6 months of age, right, he is observing something, right, he is making some conclusion out of it, he is trying to imitate or trying to follow, right, all those things are happening anywhere. So, it has to be started as early as that. So, the first set of people who are responsible for it is the parents. So, parents must have those values, they must be living those values, and then the child can start imitating it, following it and so on, right. And then comes the teacher, the primary school and the secondary school and so on, and then the colleges and then so on. So, let us look at the whole process and then we will see what we are talking about in the context of the whole thing. So, if you look at the total process of education, okay, this is how it looks like. Okay. So, the total process of education, okay, looks like this. If you look at the child of an age from 0 to 3, it is not very exact, but some estimate. Okay. So, if you look at the young child from 0 to 3, he is going by imitation. He is imitating what the parents are doing, what the other members in the family are doing, right. So, many of the accents the child picks up from the parents, from the brothers, sisters. Okay. For example, language, speaking language, the child will pick up the language exactly in a way the parents, the brothers, sisters are speaking. So, if they are using Hindi, he will pick up Hindi. If they are pronouncing in a loud voice, he will start pronouncing in a loud voice, right. So, whatever accent is used by the parents, by the other family members, the child will slowly pick up. If there are members in the family who speak different languages, he will start picking up different languages, right. And he is doing exactly what these elders are doing, right. This is imitation, and this is so much so that even after you grow up, okay, you can be identified from your accent, from your language, as to which area you belong to, right. So much of imitation is taking place. Now, when the child is imitating, the child is assuming that what you are doing, what you know is right, or what you are saying is right, and what you are doing is right. So, child is going by this assumption, he is not trying to verify, okay. He is assuming that you are a good person, you know what is right, you are doing what is right. So, what you are saying is right, what you are doing is right. So, he will do the imitation of it. So, he will not ask this question whether English is a good language or Hindi is a good language, things like that, right. He will speak the same language as you are speaking, he will call a thing by the same name as you are calling, right. He will not ask why not call it by some other name. So, he starts with assuming, and he is imitating, if you look at the age between 0 to 3 tentatively, not exactly, then he does the following, right. He follows the other members of the society, right. The difference between imitation and following is that when it is imitating, he is doing exactly what you are doing, right. But when it comes to following, he is doing what you are doing, but he is trying to put in his own part of the creativity. So, for example, when you are riding a bicycle and the child is learning to ride the bicycle, right, he will look at you, he will do some little articulation, right, and then on the basis of that he will try himself. So, when you look at the whole process, you will find that it is not exactly the same as you do, right. So, there is some imitation, but then there is some investment on part of his self, that creativity is involved. So, that is following. So, if you look at the age at 3 to 6 or little later even, depending on different child, this following takes place. Then as the child is growing, the next step is obedience. Obedience means you are asking the child to do something and he does it, right. You ask the child to go to the school, he goes to the school, right. You ask the child to dress up in a particular manner, he will dress up in a particular manner. You ask the child to keep the things intact, in a proper place, he will do this. That is the obedience. Then the fourth stage is discipline, right. Discipline means I am giving certain rules, certain basic guidelines to the child, and the child is trying to work out the details out of those basic guidelines. Okay. For example, you ask the child that we should get up early in the morning, okay, because it is good for health, right. It helps you to clean your stomach, and you get fresh air, fresh kind of sun and all that. So, when you are what you are doing is you are giving certain basic guidelines to the child, basic discipline to the child, the basic rules, and the child is trying to work out the details himself, right. You are not saying get up at 5 o'clock or get up at 7 o'clock, you are saying get up early in the morning, which means getting early before the sunrise, let us say. So, then this guideline is there, or eat what can be digested properly, right. These are the kind of guidelines which are given, these are the kind of discipline, the loose rules which are given, and the child will work it out himself. So, these are the 4 steps, imitation tentatively at the age from 0 to 3, the following from 3 to 6, and obedience and discipline 5 to 9. But this may go on much longer. Okay. You will have very grown up people who are still imitating or following rather than going to the state of obedience and discipline. So, there is no very clear cut compartment, but a rough idea. So, we are saying that imitation and following at the level of family, then this obedience and discipline at the level of school. But when the child is growing, right, beyond this age of 10, 12, right, then he starts asking question, right. Then he starts asking question, right. So, when you say the child that you should get up early in the morning, he would say why, right? What is the necessity, right. Why not work late in the night, because you can have better concentration and then get up late in the morning. So, he has started asking this question regarding the rules that you had provided or some kind of instruction that you had given. So, he will start asking this question regarding the discipline, regarding the obedience, right. So, this is the age beyond this 9, 10, 12, when he starts asking this question. It might even start earlier or it may start much later, okay. But somewhere this process starts. When this questioning has started, okay, now you cannot go ahead with imitation or following or obedience or discipline, because the very guideline is being questioned, the very instruction is being questioned, right. Now the only way to help the child is to help him to find out himself, right, find out the truth of the basic rules, the basic guidelines himself. So, there is the need for self exploration. So, there the question starts, right. The child wants to verify himself and not take your words as given, your conduct as given, right. So, that is the time the self exploration starts, and that is the time when you generally move to higher secondary schools or to the colleges, right. So, the child would like to verify himself. When this process has started, okay, now there are two possibilities. One possibility is that when he is trying to verify himself, explore himself, okay, investigate himself, he finds that what you are saying is right. Good. When he finds that it is right, he is able to understand it, right, then it leads to self discipline. Right. And this self discipline will lead to self confidence. Okay. So, this will be the correct process. This will lead to knowing, okay, to understanding. So, the child has started with assuming and is completing this process in knowing, if everything goes fine. So, what we are saying is that any child and every child will go through this process of imitation, the following, the imitation, the obedience, the discipline, and ultimately the self discipline. This is the right growth that has to take place. So, before he reaches to the society, he must have already done this self verification, right. He must be having that self discipline, right. He must be having that self confidence, right. And with this self confidence, self discipline, he is able to live in harmony within himself, right, in family, in society, in nature, in existence, right. So, this will be the right process of education. So, if you look at the total process of education, this is how it will look like, starting from imitation to follow, to obedience, to discipline, and ultimately to self discipline through self exploration, through self verification. So, this would be the total process, right. So, now if you look at what we have been talking about in this course as a process of kind of investigation or process of exploration, is talking about this part, right. So, we are starting with some proposal, set of proposals here, right, call it discipline or proposals or whatever it is, and we are asking that they can verify it themselves, they can explore within and verify, and if they find that it is right, they will be able to understand, accept it, and therefore, they will be able to live accordingly, and that will lead to self discipline, that will lead to self confidence. If you have to talk about the children, you have to start from here, right, and then go right up to this. As the child is growing, to go right up to this. So, the child will assume what you are saying is correct, what you are doing is correct, therefore, he will imitate, he will follow your all kind of instructions, and he will be take your rules as given discipline and will work on it, and then ultimately he will try to verify it himself and then get self discipline. So, this portion that we are talking about in this course is for the students who have grown up or the people who are grown up. Okay. So, if you start talking to them in terms of do's and don'ts, it will not work, right. If you start telling them this is right, this is not right, it will not work. They would like to understand, they will like to verify, they will like to explore, investigate, that is very natural, and that is why we are saying do not accept them as given truth, take them as proposal, verify them, explore them on your own right, okay. And if you find them correct, okay, you will anyway accept it, and when you accept it, you will be anyway living according to it, and that will lead to self discipline. So, this is what we are saying. So, this is process is designed basically for the students who are grown up or the people who are grown up, that is people beyond the age of 10, 12, let us say, people who have already started asking questions, right. They want to verify things themselves and not take things as given as granted, they do not want to start with assuming. So, that is it. Of course, there is other part of it which I have not talked about, but I can just introduce that if they started verifying themselves, the self exploration here, and they found that it is not correct. So, the discipline, the instruction that you gave is not correct, then there is lot of problem, and that is what we are facing in the society. Okay. So, if you look at that, it goes like this, but I did not discuss it much because this is not the right way of education. This is anyway creating more problem than really causing any help. Okay. So, if in this process of self exploration he finds that it is wrong, right, then the child is confused. He does not know what to do, whether to accept your discipline or not to accept your discipline, whether to obey your instruction or not to obey your instruction, right. The child is confused, and the child starts picking up anything and everything from around, okay, and that is the result, right. He gets into an arbitrariness. When he gets into arbitrariness and you find that he is not following your discipline, not following your instruction, right, what do you do? When the father finds that the child is not following the instruction, not obeying the discipline, now obeying the instruction and following the discipline, if the teacher is finding this with the student, what does he do generally? He tends to dominate. Yeah, beating is one part of asserting that domination, right. Telling that I am your father is another way of dominating. Becoming angry, shouting, asking to get out and all that. Okay. So, when all this is done, this is domination, and when the father or the teacher is dominating, the child is accepting it or rejecting it? Rejecting it, right. So, domination leads to arbitrariness on the part of the child, and if this circle starts happening, will it lead to a state of relationship or a feeling of opposition? Opposition. So, you have feeling of opposition, right. When you have feeling of opposition, right, and the father continues to dominate or the teacher continues to dominate, at some point there is a revolt. This is what is happening in the family, this is what is happening in the society, this is what is happening among the nation, right.
exactly happening in our lives.
Yes. And when this goes on and it accentuates, there is a struggle, and finally there is a war. Right. All these age one things, you can modify yourself, it does not exactly apply, exact age, but giving you just an idea, little idea of it. So, this is what is happening in the family. The struggle is going on, the war is going on, right. The child has revolted against the father, the student has revolted against the teacher, the husband has revolted against the wife, and vice versa, right. And if this is the case, then we are stuck. Now there is no education taking place, because the child is not willing to accept, it is not accepting it, you are trying to dominate, you are not able to dominate. So, there is a total chaos, right. So, we are saying every next generation is less developed, situation is getting from bad to worse, right, is more is in more contradiction within, right, is in opposition with the family, is struggling with the society, and is having conflict with the nature. All this is happening. That is why I did not really kind of explain this as a process of education. This is not a process of education, this is the failure of the process of education, it is not going to work. So, if you look at the process of education, it is like this. This whole thing is for the starting from the child to grown up to adult and everyone. This portion is for the grown up, this part, and this is what we are talking about. So, it is true that will it apply to the children directly? No. For the children we have to start with imitation, following, obedience, discipline, and then ultimately come to this, right. For the grown up we can start directly, but it is important for both children as well as the grown up, because the children will anyway grow up. When they grow up they will ask these questions, right. So, better be ready as parents, as teachers, to respond to their question, to help them in the process of self exploration, self investigation, help them to find out for themselves what is right for them, what is not right for them, and help them to live with what they found right.
Prevention is better than cure.
Yes, prevention is better than cure. In fact, many societies which have not built up this process of self exploration, self investigation in themselves, and then they thought that they can go by this imitation and following and obedience and discipline, okay, they are breaking down today, under the influence of this modern education. So, what modern education is doing is raising question about all this discipline, the rules. Of course, it is not giving the answer, but it is raising the question, and when these questions are raised, right, the child is asking this question to the parents, to the teachers, and teachers are not able to respond. So, the child is confused. So, at least he is not going comfortably with the tradition, with the family, right. He somehow is now in contradiction, in opposition, and is revolting, and this is what is happening with most of the traditional families and the traditional societies, right. Many of the traditional societies are breaking down under the influence of this modern education, which is raising this question, not giving the answer, but creating enough confusion as far as the prevailing assumptions, preconditionings, in the society is concerned, right. So, when you raise this question and the responsible people in the society are not able to answer you, then you are stuck, they are also stuck, okay. So, then there is whole series of this, what we are calling as arbitrariness and domination and opposition and revolt and struggle and war. Yeah. This you find even in Indian societies happening. So, many of your family traditions you are not continuing, they are not able to help you understand the importance of it, you are not able to see the importance, right. So, you are in contradiction within, you are in contradiction with the members in the family, the senior members of the family, with the teacher, right. And therefore, the whole tradition, the whole discipline is breaking down. Yeah, so that is the difference between the making this value education, or for that matter any content of education available to the children, right. So, if you look at the first part, this imitation, the following, the obedience, this will start with the parents, the teachers understanding the reality and living with the reality themselves. So, if they have understood the reality and they are living with reality with right feeling, then the child will pick up by way of imitation, by way of following, by way of obedience, by way of discipline. And at an age when he starts verifying them, he will find that they are correct for him. When they find that they are correct for him, he will be able to accept it and he will get self discipline. But because we are dealing with the grown up kind of people, the adults, right, in the university, okay, we started with this self exploration with the assumption that they will anyway be asking question, right, they would like to verify it themselves. Therefore, why not start there rather than starting with imitation and following and so on. Yes, good.
So there is, I think somewhere this the self verification start at one age, but after some time again it does not is there that the self verification, and there also means not in every case or for every people that happen. They go into this bar position, even they don't find this in, but there are people who are following that and doing that, and so what about those kind of people?
Yeah. So, you have to see that there are people who grow physically, but they do not grow mentally. Okay. So, the age is increasing, but there is no mental growth. So, they have not even come to the point of asking question. So, they will continue to imitate, they will continue to follow, they will continue to obey instruction, and take discipline and work with it. Yes, there are people. That is why we are saying this age is not really the exact description, just giving some idea. The normally this is what will happen, but yes, there are people who spend their whole lifetime just imitating, just following. Yeah, even if you give them discipline, they will not be able to interpret that discipline, to work out the details. They will say, tell me what to do, what not to do.
Yeah.
Don't tell me get up early in the morning, before the sunrise. Tell me, do I have to get up at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock? Right? They want this kind of instruction. Yeah, there are people.
They means that they are in that imitation.
Yeah, so they have not grown mentally, they have grown only physically. Yeah, I remember in my village there was a person, okay, who always thought that he has always been of the same age. He was around 40 plus, okay, and if you tell him that you were a small child, before, okay, he will be willing to fight with you, he will be ready to fight, because he thinks that he was always like this, that kind of mindset. Yeah, he cannot look beyond and behind and relate, Yeah. So there can be people like him.
Maybe he was deep enough.
Yes, he he was talking about the self and not the body. Yes.
No, I was raising second question means
But at times even that self gets some maturity, like he was not the same in the child and he was not the same in the... So how can we say that he was always the same?
Yeah, I mean, if you talk to him, and see, almost behaving like a child, and he's more 40 plus. Like if you tell this 2-3 times that no, you are very young, look, this, ask this person, like this one, then he will start fighting with you. So he was very mature. Then he would not fight. He would say that, okay, I understand, you don't understand, that's it. Okay. So why fight on it? So yes, there are people who spend their whole lifetime just imitating and following.
Even if you see now in the society, people are there who are basically following. They are not deciding on their own. They are just copying things.
Can we say that is that also a failure of education?
Yes, yes. In fact, what is happening is that if you look at the child, human child, he wants to know. He will ask questions. He will ask all kind of questions, right? He will ask question, which relates to things right up to the existence, and he will not be satisfied before. Very simple, if you look at the child, young child, 4 years, 5 years age, okay. If a friend comes to your house, he will say, who is he? My friend. Where is he come from? Delhi. Where is Delhi? In India. Where is India? And there is a series of questions, right. Okay. That is, he wants to know about the whole existence ultimately, So his question will ultimately go right up to existence. But what is happening is that either you do not have the answer or you do not have the time. So at one point you shout back, and when you shout back, then the child gets hurt, okay. He gets afraid, frightened, and then he does not ask question, right, or he rarely asks question, right. So this is what has happened with most of the children in the family, in the schools, in the society. Yeah. So it is certainly the failure of education at home, in the family, education in the college, schools, in the colleges, in the whole society. Yes. If you encourage him to ask question, he will ask question about the whole existence. And interestingly, when we have been conducting this workshop for the people in the society, we found that very old people, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years of age, right. When they find that there is a possibility to understand things, understand themselves, this family, the society, they start asking very, very basic questions.